In Virginia's first district, Qasim Rashid is running for Congress, and he's a very compelling guy, an incredible life story. Has been doing work in civil rights, trying to fight for people for years. Qasim Rashid. Welcome to Yang Speaks, the awesome Qasim Rashid. Hey, Qasim, how are you?
I'm good, Andrew. How are you? Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. So I feel like you and I had a bunch in common. Where are you an immigrant or the son of immigrants
I'm an
yourself?
immigrant. I'm an immigrant.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
four.
So you were four. It counts, man. It counts. I mean,
That's it.
you must remember arriving here. But the other thing we have in common is that we both have a legal background. Though you became a civil rights lawyer and community activist, whereas I did something much more soul sucking for 5 months.
I did the corporate law thing for a couple of years because you need the paycheck to pay your student loans. But you're right, it can be soul sucking if it's not the right fit for you, and that's what helped me make the ultimate jump to civil rights and human rights work full time.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the civil rights legal work that you did over that period of years, because you built like a very strong following on the basis of fighting for people.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to what my parents ingrained in my siblings and I at a very young age. So whatever you do in life, if you're not centering service to humanity, it's really a waste of your life. And that was the word that they used. And so as I got older, that was the lens with which how I looked at everything. And going to law school really opened my eyes to kind of understanding the incredible role the law plays in whether people have basic access to decency and dignity or not. And in law school, I got involved with a nonprofit here in Virginia called the Virginia Poverty Law Center, their Office of Domestic and Sexual Violence. And so started from a very early point in my legal career supporting women who are survivors. And that's pro bono work I do through this day. I started working with nonprofits on expanding healthcare and education access, on disaster relief, was a prison chaplain. And all this to say that when you get to understand how folks are struggling on the front lines, you really begin to understand, and on the theme of you and I having a lot in common, Andrew, you really begin to understand that these aren't Republican or Democrat issues. These are basic human issues, and it's critical that we stand together and work together and address these. One of the most rewarding jobs I had was at a women's rights organization in DC, where we were able to work with the Department of Justice and other various government entities on just ensuring and advising that the policies being put forth really do give people equal access under the law. That's really what this has to be about.
Yeah, you're a humanist and humanitarian first and foremost. I feel it's one reason I like you is that you have a very elevated perspective on a lot of these issues. You're running in a relatively rural part of Virginia that's been somewhat Republican leaning, but it's going purple right now. And I think you've got a great chance to win. I think you're going to have a lot of wind at your back. Can you tell us a little bit more about your opponent? And your district and the race, the state of the race. How's Qasim race shaping up?
Well, so the race is going great. Let me start with my opponent, career politician. He's been in office 34 years, and pretty heavily corporate funded. Hasn't really made the most kosher decisions financially. Bought himself stock in a pharmaceutical company working on COVID-19 treatment way back in February, and then told us the virus is low risk and not spreading. And his entire approach, this entire campaign, has been to attack me for my faith, tie me to Islamic terrorism, and just all sorts of ridiculous things. That's never been my style, and we're not going to respond in kind. This is a district, if you visit Virginia, you get to really see Southern hospitality. And this is a district where people really enjoy being in each other's company. They enjoy, talking to complete strangers. And there's this sense of civility and I think honor and dignity in the folks here that I've seen, where even if you are from a different perspective or different faith or different racial background, you're treated with a lot of respect. And I've really enjoyed that about living in Virginia and raising our children here. The race has been going extraordinarily well, and the early voter turnout shows us with a massive lead. About 136,000 votes have been cast so far. And we're looking at the polling that we've done on people who've already voted. Right now, we are getting over 70% of the vote. And so for us, it's about continuing that trend, pushing folks to the polls, making sure we're winning the folks on the fence. And we're having event after event where now Republicans and Trump supporters are showing up and we're welcoming them in. And it's been a really powerful experience so far.
I had the same experience on the trail, Qasim, where I would show up places where there were frankly not like, that many Asian Americans in some of the early states. But people will listen to you. They realize if you're there for the right reasons. People just want to be respected and heard. And if you respect and hear them, then they'll respect and hear you. And then they'll
Yeah.
figure out, it's like, wait a minute, this person actually here was my experience. It's like they spend some time with you and they realize that there are only two possibilities. One, that you're an absolute crazy person, or two, that you're genuinely there to help. And then when they get rid of number one, they're like, wait, this person's actually sincere.
That's exactly
And
right.
that's very, very powerful stuff. Like, it can draw in people from both sides of the aisle because Americans, in my mind, are unified in being fed up right now. And there are like different strains of fed upness, but the fed upness is near universal. And if you seem like a genuine public servant and humanist who wants to help them and their families, they'll support you.
Well, and we saw that yesterday. We had an event here in the district, which about 30 people showed up. Not a massive event, but certainly not tiny. It was a good crowd, and we had a big Rashid for Congress sign behind me. And so folks who were Trump supporters started driving by, honking, Trump 2020 with the Trump flags, and we ignored it. And then a whole bunch of them showed up carrying a Trump flag and just kind of yelling and screaming. And I paused the event, and I had the microphone, so I kind of raised my voice to the Trump supporters, and I was like, "Hey guys, you don't need to yell. You can be part of this conversation too. Why don't you come on in?" And I think I caught them off guard because I think they expected me to kind of shout them out. I said, "Yeah, come on in. Let's have a conversation." I got their name. The guy's name was Chad, and we actually had a pretty meaningful conversation. I refused to respond to the vitriol, but at the end of the day, after the event ended, Andrew, out of these 30 people, 5 of them walked up to me one by one and said, "I'm a lifelong Republican. I have never voted Democrat in my entire life. I feel like I don't really have a party. I wasn't sure where to vote. But now, after seeing the way you treat people, even if they disagree with you, you've got my vote." And I'm like, that's brilliant, because that's exactly
Yeah.
what I'm trying to build.
There are so many people who feel politically adrift right
Yeah.
now because if you're a lifelong Republican and you look up at Donald Trump and you say, this is not what I signed up for, like,
Yeah.
I voted for this guy last time and like this has been a crushing disappointment.
Yeah.
And so then they're looking around and saying, what do I do? And you presented the right kind of unifying figure and message for them to say, like, he's sincere, he wants to help. So Qasim, you are for cash relief, like after you get to Congress. When's the first time you were exposed to universal basic income? Like when did you first hear about it?
So I'm a student of history, and there's a great book by Michael Hart called The 100, where he ranks the 100 most influential people in history. It's a great way to sound really smart by only reading like a 5-page excerpt on every major figure in history. And number 52 he ranks a person named Umar, who was the second caliph after Prophet Muhammad. And Umar was not just a religious figure, but he was an economic genius. And he introduced this concept of UBI about 1400 years ago to the Arabian Peninsula and to the Islamic Empire at that time. And it was designed to be exactly that, a guaranteed form of cash payments to working families to ensure that they could have a basic level of livelihood. And it helped ignite the economy. And that's actually why Dr. Michael Hart ranks him as number 52, because of his economic genius. And that was one of them. So for me, this principle is something that I was fortunate to be exposed to at an early age. And in my research and study, not only was I excited to find out that we were close to passing UBI in the United States back in the 70s under a Republican president, no less, but if you look at all the studies around the world, you find consistent study after study demonstrating that this not only uplifts people out of poverty, but it ignites the economy. It advances entrepreneurship and innovation. It creates upward mobility. It decreases rates of suicide and depression and mental illness, and elevates senses of well-being and just the overall human experience. So I see every reason to push forward for this. Haven't seen a single valid reason to oppose it.
Yes, and you're exactly the person who's going to help us pass this thing when we get you into
Right.
Congress, and we'll all be around and say, well, no, what do we do to restore a path forward for millions of Americans, but also to reconstitute a sense of public trust. And I've run organizations, and it's very hard to just go around asking people for their buy-in or their trust or their confidence unless you actually step forward yourself and invest in them. Like if
Yep.
we as a society say, look, everyone has intrinsic value, your kids have value, you matter, and we're not just going to bullshit you and talk about it. Like we're actually going to put our money where our mouth is. Like that is actually the transformative uh, change that people will respond to, because
Yeah.
they're just used to people talking to them and not doing anything. And then if you actually do something that meaningfully impacts and improves their life, then it's a game changer, and we can make it happen. Like you're going to be one of the people that helps make it happen from the halls of Congress starting 2021. After
Yeah.
you win this thing, after you win, what district are you in Virginia? And if someone wants to help you and support your campaign, where do they go? How do they help?
We're the first district of Virginia. You can go to our website, rashidforva.com. I'm on social media at Qasim Rashid, just my name. Really, really easy to find. And to add to your point, I mean, there's a reason, Andrew, that our campaign slogan is compassion through action, that having compassion in and of itself isn't enough. You need to take action. Otherwise, it's just a meaningless word that makes you feel good, but doesn't actually do anything. And so we need to elevate the level of love and compassion we have for humanity into meaningful action to get them the support that they need and deserve, the basic human dignity: food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, and clothing. And for those who want to get involved in our kind of a campaign, I don't care what side of the political aisle you are on, if these values matter to you, check us out, rashidforva.com. Send us an email to organizing@rashidforva.com, and we will get you on board.
Yes, they will get you on board. I love it. And you're beyond a humanist and humanitarian. You're like a thinker and doer. And I love the doer part because you're right. The only thing that makes me feel better about a problem is doing something about it. And we just need more Americans to have that same approach, because things suck right now. But if we all did something about it, we could improve things pretty quickly. And one thing you can do that's very straightforward is help candidates like Qasim get into Congress, where they can actually start pushing the laws of the land in the right direction. Thank you, Qasim. Really, man, I feel great about your race. I think there's going to be a very powerful wind at your back that's going to help blow you like forward across this metaphorical finish line. And you're just getting started. It's awesome.
Thank you, man. Good to be here. Good to chat with you.